Yo, what it do? Welcome back to the channel. And I was trying to figure out what to react to, what type of video to make, but I want to talk about what Draymond tweeted the other night. I think it was last night or 2 nights ago. And then KD had a funny response to it. But he says, I'm watching the 98 Bulls versus Utah in the finals, and I can't help but notice our 2017 team would beat the Bulls by a dub, and then these Jazz by 40 if we're playing these brands of basketball. And that's why it's dumb to compare eras. And I fully agree with the bottom statement. Like a lot of people say, like the 2001 Lakers would have beat us, or any of the Bulls teams would have beat the Warriors. But the bias in me obviously thinks I personally think 2017 would be any team. But at the end of the day, you cannot compare eras. Like you can't even compare, Jordan and LeBron, whatever you want to do, Jordan and even Kobe to an extent. Even though their games are so similar, the games were played differently with foul calls, the type of shots people were taking, and it all plays into it. It's evolution of the sport. Like you can't compare a 90s team with now because from the early like the 2010s, it was slow. It was even since the 2000s, it was slowly moving towards 3-point shooting was the primary offense. Like today's game, you cannot really be a center unless you shoot threes. Even though, yeah, if you have a dominant player like Shaq and put him in today's game, he'd just be just as dominant, maybe even more if he worked on his free throws because all the fouls that players get today. But you pretty much, if you're coming out of college or even in high school, you need to develop that 3-point shot if you're a center, just because you could space the floor better, and that's how the offense is in today's game. Now the Warriors sped that up just because of Curry and Clay, and everyone else around the league too. Even JJ Redick, players like Ray Allen, obviously, Damian Lillard, like Harden, everyone adapted to it very well and shooting threes lights out. You need that. In the 90s, it was primarily, who could dominate in the paint, who can hit the mid range. You can play harder defense, you can hand check. So it's just the eras are so different, but that's naturally how it is. Like I'm curious to see how the game's going to be in 20 years because the evolution of the game, if you look at history, every era is getting better and better. Just the skill wise, I don't know what the type of calls are going to be in the future. Who knows way down the line if they're going to add a 4-point line? Then you really can't compare. So, like you said, the brand of basketball that's being played, it's so different. Because if you drop us off and put us in the 90s, I think we'll be any team just because we're gonna hit them with that 3-point barrage and they're not gonna be able to respond. Even if they dominate us in the paint, we're just gonna come back and hit a three in your face. And I feel like the offenses are so complex now that they wouldn't they wouldn't be able to hang. But if you put them in our era and they were adapting just like all the teams are now and building that chemistry through the 2010s and taking it into the 20s, it's going to be a lot closer just because the brand of basketball and the eras and the type of shots we're going to take and the foul calls are all on the level playing field. None of these eras are on the same playing field and level, so that's just my take on it. Like you just can't compare it. You can compare teams that are in the same era, and that's pretty much it. Like it's fun to think about. That's why Bleacher Report, their player portals are so fun to watch, just because it's a hypothetical matchup like Draymond versus Rodman. It's funny to watch, but there would be like no simulation. Well, the only simulation that's close is 2K, but is that really close? 2K simulation? No. So you could just not compare it. So let me show you guys what KD said to it. It was pretty funny. Did they show the response? Oh, here it is. I can't tell you what the results would be, but I do know that Steve Kerr would have demanded that we put Steve Kerr in as many pick and rolls as possible. See, that's true. Like Kerr was not going to be able to keep up, and he's like pretty much one of their few great 3-point shooters from those Bulls teams. So you're not going to even be able to play him because we're going to dominate him on the offensive side. Just put him in pick and rolls. He's not going to, like, bro, if Kerr, say he's on Durant, I mean, not Durant, say he'd be on Thompson or Clay. Thompson or Curry. I said Thompson or Clay. You do a pick and roll with KD, even or pick and roll with Dre. He's not going to be able to pick up if it's a roll or a pick and pop. So I thought that was a funny response. But me, as the Dubs fan, I'm taking 2017 versus anyone. And then, with that being said, you just can't compare. So it's kind of dumb to even talk about because you can't take into account everything because you don't know how a Bulls team would have played in an era like today, and you don't know how a team like the Warriors would play in a era back then. I wish there was a way to see it, but We just can't. So it's just gonna remain hypotheticals and just us looking at records and stats and what we accomplished in specific eras. But to put two teams in different eras against each other, it just doesn't work. Leave your comments on how you feel about this. Do you agree, disagree? And yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for all the support you guys always leave me. I appreciate it. And peace.